Beneath the scorching sun and shifting dunes of the world's most unforgiving deserts lies a secret, one that defies everything we think we know about these barren landscapes. What if I told you that the Sahara, the Gobi, or the Atacama weren't always deserts, that beneath their sands, hidden like pages of a lost history book, are the remnants of lush forests, sprawling wetlands, and vast lakes teeming with life? These places weren't just different, they were alive, pulsing with ecosystems so vibrant, they'd make today's deserts seem like a mirage. And the most astonishing part: these vanished worlds aren't just relics of the past, they're keys to understanding how our planet transforms and what it might do next. Imagine standing in the middle of the Sahara, where nothing but endless sand stretches to the horizon. Now close your eyes and picture this same place 10,000 years ago. The air is thick with humidity, the ground beneath your feet is soft and fertile, and the sound of water is everywhere, rivers carving through the land, lakes shimmering under the sun, and animals you'd never associate with a desert roaming freely. This was the Green Sahara, a paradise lost to time. But how does a rainforest turn into a desert, and why should we care? The answers lie buried in the sand, waiting to be unearthed by scientists who listen to the whispers of the Earth itself. This is the story of Earth's greatest disappearing acts, the ecosystems that vanished without a trace, leaving only echoes behind. From prehistoric mega lakes to forests that once rivaled the Amazon, these ghostly landscapes hold mysteries that could rewrite our understanding of climate, evolution, and even our own future. As we dig deeper, we'll follow the trail of fossils, ancient pollen, and geological oddities that reveal how these worlds thrived and why they fell. But this isn't just a journey into the past. It's a mirror held up to our present, a warning, and perhaps even a glimpse of what's to come. So let's brush away the sands of time and uncover the secrets hidden beneath, because the desert's silence is anything but empty. It's a story waiting to be told. The clues to Earth's forgotten worlds don't come from a single source. They're pieced together like a mosaic, where every fragment tells part of the story. Paleoecologists, the detectives of deep time, don't rely on guesswork. They use tools that would make even Sherlock Holmes envious. Take fossilized pollen, for example. These tiny, nearly indestructible grains, preserved in layers of sediment, act like time capsules. When scientists sift through them, they can identify exactly what plants thrived in an area thousands, or even millions of years ago. Finding palm tree pollen in the middle of the Sahara isn't just surprising, it's proof that the landscape was once unrecognizable, but pollen is just the beginning. Sediment cores, long cylinders of earth drilled from lake beds or ocean floors, are like reading the pages of a history book written in mud. Each layer represents a different era, and trapped within them are chemical signatures, microscopic fossils, and even traces of ancient rainfall. In the Sahara, these cores revealed something astonishing. Layers of freshwater shells and fish bones buried beneath the sand, silent witnesses to a time when massive lakes stretched farther than the eye could see. Then there's the chemistry of rocks themselves. Isotopes in minerals can reveal past temperatures, while the types of oxygen atoms locked in ancient groundwater tell us whether an area was wet or arid. Perhaps the most haunting evidence, though, comes from the art left behind by early humans. In caves across the Sahara, vibrant paintings depict giraffes, elephants, and crocodiles, animals that couldn't survive in today's desert. These aren't just artworks, they're snapshots of a lost world. Combine these clues with fossilized animal tracks, petrified tree roots, and even the remains of ancient soil, and suddenly the puzzle starts coming together. The deserts we know today were once lush, dynamic ecosystems where rain fell regularly and life flourished. So why does this matter now? Because these ancient shifts weren't random. They followed patterned cycles of climate change driven by Earth's wobbling orbit, shifts in ocean currents, or even volcanic activity. By studying how ecosystems responded in the past, scientists can better predict how modern environments might react to today's climate challenges. If a rainforest can turn to dust, what does that mean for our future? The answers aren't just buried in the sand, they're written in the rocks, the pollen, and the echoes of creatures long gone. This isn't just about uncovering the past, it's about decoding the survival manual for our planet. The Sahara we see today, a vast ocean of sand stretching over 3.5 million square miles, was once anything but barren. If you could step back in time just 11,000 years, you'd find yourself in a landscape so different, it might as well be another planet. Towering grasses sway under a sky heavy with monsoon rains, rivers carve through fertile valleys, and herds of elephants, giraffes, and even hippos roam freely. This was the African humid period, a time when the Sahara wasn't just green, it was thriving. The evidence of this transformation isn't hidden in some obscure corner of science. It's etched into the land itself. Take Wadi al-Hitan, Egypt's so-called Valley of the Whales. Today, it's a stark desert, but 40 million years ago, it was submerged under a shallow sea. The fossilized skeletons of ancient whales, perfectly preserved in the sandstone, tell a story of a time when this part of the world was underwater. Fast forward to the Green Sahara era, and the same region was crisscrossed by rivers so massive, their ghostly outlines can still be seen from space. Satellite imagery reveals ancient river channels buried beneath the sand like faint scars of a forgotten world. But how did such a dramatic change happen? The answer lies in Earth's dance with the sun. Around 11,000 years ago, a slight wobble in the planet's orbit shifted the monsoon patterns, pulling rain clouds deep into what's now the Sahara. For thousands of years, this moisture transformed the desert into a savanna, creating a paradise for both wildlife and early humans. Rock paintings in places like Tassili en Najer in Algeria capture this lost world, showing scenes of hunters stalking herds of cattle, surrounded by lakes and lush vegetation. Then, around 5,000 years ago, the rains retreated. The monsoons shifted south, the rivers dried up, and the desert reclaimed its throne. The speed of this change is startling. Some studies suggest the transition from grassland to desert may have taken just a few centuries. For the people who called this place home, it would have been a slow-motion catastrophe. Their wells ran dry, their grazing lands turned to dust, and eventually they were forced to abandon the region altogether. What's truly fascinating is that this cycle isn't unique. Geological records suggest the Sahara has flipped between green and arid multiple times over millions of years, and it could happen again. Some climate models predict that rising global temperatures might one day revive the African monsoon, turning parts of the Sahara green once more. But this isn't just a story about the past or a speculative future. It's a reminder of how fragile and how resilient our planet's ecosystems can be. The Sahara's hidden past challenges us to think differently about deserts, not as lifeless wastelands, but as landscapes with memories, capable of transformation on a scale we're only beginning to understand. The American Southwest, with its sun-baked deserts and cracked earth, holds secrets just as astonishing as the Sahara's vanished greenery. Beneath the Mojave and Sonoran deserts, hidden in plain sight, are the ghostly outlines of lakes so vast they could rival the Great Lakes of today. Picture Death Valley, one of the hottest, driest places on Earth. Now imagine it filled with a body of water so deep it could swallow a 50-story building. This was Lake Manly, a Pleistocene giant that stretched nearly 100 miles long and reached depths of over 600 feet. Its ancient shorelines, etched like bathtub rings into the cliffs of the Panamint Range, tell a story of a time when this scorching basin was a thriving aquatic paradise. But Lake Manly wasn't alone. Across the southwest, similar lakes dotted the landscape, fed by meltwater from glaciers and a climate far wetter than today. Fossilized fish, freshwater mollusks, and even the bones of mammoths have been found in these long, dry basins, proof that life once flourished where now only dust devils dance. In places like Lake Bonneville, which covered much of modern-day Utah, the water levels were so high they left behind wave-cut terraces visible from miles away. These lakes weren't just puddles, they were ecosystems, teeming with biodiversity and supporting early human populations who relied on them for survival. So what happened to these watery giants? The answer lies in the delicate balance of climate. As the last ice age waned, temperatures rose, glaciers retreated, and the rains that once filled these lakes grew scarce. Over thousands of years, evaporation outpaced replenishment, and the lakes shrank into salty remnants like the Great Salt Lake or vanished entirely, leaving behind Playa's bone-dry basins where minerals crystallize in the sun. But their legacy isn't just geological. These ancient lakes hold clues for modern hydrologists grappling with today's water crises. By studying how these lakes formed, persisted, and eventually disappeared, scientists can better predict how current reservoirs and aquifers might respond to prolonged droughts. The parallels are impossible to ignore. Just as the Southwest's ancient lakes dwindled under shifting climates, today's water resources face similar pressures. The Colorado River, a lifeline for millions, is running alarmingly low, and underground aquifers are being drained faster than they can recharge. Understanding the past isn't just about curiosity, it's about survival. The same forces that turned Lake Manly into a salt flat are at work today, reminding us that water, even in abundance, is never permanent. The deserts of the Southwest, with their silent shorelines and fossilized whispers, are more than just a graveyard of lost lakes. They're a warning, and perhaps if we listen closely, a guide. The Gobi Desert, a vast expanse of golden dunes and relentless winds, holds more than just sand. It's a time capsule of Earth's most dramatic transformations. Step into this harsh landscape today, and you'll find scorching heat and endless horizons. But dig a little deeper, and the ground beneath your feet tells a different story. This is where paleontologists have uncovered some of the most extraordinary dinosaur fossils ever discovered, from the razor-clawed velociraptors to the sturdy, frilled protoceratops. These creatures didn't roam a barren wasteland. They thrived in a world of lush wetlands where rivers meandered through forests and shallow lakes teemed with life. The proof is etched into the very rocks of the Gobi. Fossilized tree roots, preserved with such detail you can almost see the grooves of their bark, tell us this was once a landscape shaded by towering greenery. Freshwater snails, their delicate shells perfectly intact, lie trapped in layers of stone that now crumble under the desert sun. These aren't just random relics, they're pieces of a puzzle that reveal the Gobi's secret rhythm. Like the Sahara, this desert has swung between extremes, cycling through wet and dry phases over millions of years. What's truly remarkable is how these shifts shaped life and death in the region. The fossil beds of the Flaming Cliffs, a striking red sandstone formation, are a graveyard of dinosaurs that perished suddenly, some locked in eternal combat. A velociraptor and protoceratops, forever frozen mid-battle, suggest a catastrophic event, perhaps a collapsing sand dune or a flash flood. These snapshots of prehistoric drama give scientists a rare glimpse into how species struggled to survive as their environment changed around them. But the Gobi story isn't just about extinction, it's also about adaptation. Some dinosaurs, like the duck-billed hadrosaurs, left behind nests and eggs, evidence that they found ways to reproduce even as the climate grew harsher. Others, like the small, feathered theropods, may have evolved traits to cope with drier conditions. By studying these ancient survivors, researchers are piecing together a playbook for resilience, one that could help us understand how modern animals might fare in a warming world. The Gobi's hidden past challenges our assumptions about deserts. They're not just static backdrops to Earth's history, they're dynamic stages where life has risen, fallen, and risen again. Every fossil, every layer of sediment is a clue to a mystery that spans millennia. How do ecosystems respond when the world around them shifts? The answers are buried here, waiting for the next gust of wind to reveal them. Australia's outback holds echoes of a time when water ruled the land. Where cracked salt flats bake under relentless sun today, enormous lakes once shimmered, some stretching farther than entire countries. Lake Eyre, a basin so vast it could swallow Switzerland, was the heart of an inland sea. To the southeast, Lake Mungo's waters lapped against dunes now famous for their archaeological treasures. Together, these lakes formed a liquid highway across the continent, nurturing ecosystems unlike anything seen in modern Australia. Giant wombats called diprotodons, some weighing over 2 tons, lumbered along the shores, while flocks of thunderbirds, massive, flightless predators, stalked the wetlands. And walking alongside them were the first Australians, whose tools and fireplaces lie preserved in the dunes like pages from a 40,000-year-old diary. The evidence of this lost world is written in the land itself. At Lake Mungo, crescent-shaped beaches called Lunnet's Mark where waves once carved the shoreline. Dig into these dunes and you'll find more than sand. Stone tools sharp enough to slice hide, grinding stones worn smooth by generations of use, and the remains of ancient hearths, some still flecked with charcoal, tell a story of human ingenuity. But the most haunting discoveries are the footprints. At Willandra Lakes, a set of fossilized tracks captures a family walking together across wet clay, their steps preserved as the mud hardened under the sun. These aren't just impressions in the earth, they're frozen moments, proof that people thrived here when the lakes were full. Then, the water began to vanish. Around 15,000 years ago, the monsoons shifted, turning rivers to trickles and lakes to dust bowls. The diprotodons and thunderbirds disappeared, their bones sinking into the sediments. But the people, they adapted. Archaeologists trace their resilience in the changing tools left behind: smaller, more precise blades for hunting smaller game, and grinders for processing tough desert seeds. At Lake Mungo, layers of shell middens show how diets shifted from fish and waterfowl to reptiles and drought-resistant plants. This wasn't abandonment, it was reinvention, a testament to human flexibility in the face of environmental chaos. What makes these sites extraordinary isn't just their age, it's their continuity. The same shores that once hosted megafauna became sacred gathering places for countless generations. Today, the traditional custodians of these lands, the Mut, Imut, Thai, and Ungjiampa peoples, still read the stories in the dunes, connecting the dots between ancient hearths and modern knowledge. The lesson here isn't just about survival, it's about memory. When the lakes dried, the culture didn't fade, it evolved, folding the past into the present. As climate change reshapes our world, these salt-crusted basins offer more than history. They're a blueprint for endurance written in stone, sand, and the stubborn persistence of life. The Namib Desert, one of the oldest and driest places on Earth, holds a secret beneath its waves of rust-colored sand, an entire network of rivers that once pulsed with life. From above, the landscape looks untouched by water, a sea of dunes stretching endlessly toward the Atlantic. But peer beneath the surface with satellite radar, and the truth emerges. The faint, sinuous outlines of ancient river channels, some wider than the Nile, carved into the bedrock. These weren't seasonal trickles, they were mighty waterways fed by rains in the Angolan highlands that once cut through the desert like veins, bringing life to what's now a rain-starved wilderness. The evidence of this lost world isn't just geological. Scattered across the Namib are fossils of creatures that couldn't survive here today: freshwater crabs, their delicate claws preserved in stone, and the massive bones of hippopotamuses, animals that need deep, permanent water to thrive. These aren't random relics, they're proof that the Namib was once a place where rivers ran year-round, where crocodiles basked on muddy banks, and where herds of animals gathered to drink. Even the desert's famous fairy circles, those mysterious patches of barren ground, might be echoes of this wetter past, their patterns shaped by the ghostly remains of long-vanished vegetation. So what happened to these rivers? The answer lies in the slow dance of continents and the fickleness of climate. Over millions of years, tectonic shifts tilted the land, diverting the flow of water away from the Namib. At the same time, global climate patterns changed, weakening the monsoons that once fed these waterways. Without rain, the rivers shrank, then vanished, leaving behind dry canyons that the wind slowly filled with sand. But the most striking part of this story isn't just the loss, it's the speed. Some studies suggest the transition from lush river valleys to desert might have taken just a few thousand years, a blink in geological time. The Namib's fossil rivers aren't just a curiosity, they're a warning. Today, the same forces that dried up this landscape, shifting rainfall, rising temperatures, and human interference, threaten rivers worldwide. The Colorado, the Indus, even the mighty Nile are all under pressure, their flows dwindling as demand grows and rains become less predictable. The Namib shows us what happens when a water system collapses, not just a change in scenery, but the unraveling of an entire ecosystem. Yet it also offers a strange kind of hope. If rivers can vanish, they can also return under the right conditions. Some climate models suggest that future shifts in rainfall could one day revive parts of the Namib's ancient waterways, at least temporarily. The desert's buried rivers remind us that nothing on this planet is permanent, not even the driest places on Earth. The Rub al-Khali, its name meaning the empty quarter, sprawls across southern Arabia like a vast, lifeless ocean of sand. But beneath its surface, hidden under layers of scorching dunes, lies a contradiction that defies logic: water. Not just any water, but ancient reservoirs so old they were last replenished when mammoths still roamed the earth. These fossil aquifers, some holding water 20,000 years in age, are relics of a time when Arabia wasn't a desert at all, but a land crisscrossed by rivers and dotted with lakes. The discovery of these underground treasures began with a simple question: how could a place so dry hold so much water? The answer came from satellites. High above the dunes, radar images pierced the sand, revealing the ghostly outlines of long-lost river systems, channels wider than the Nile, now buried under centuries of wind-blown sediment. These weren't seasonal streams, but mighty waterways that once carried monsoon rains from the mountains to the lowlands, filling basins that shimmered under the Arabian sun. Today, the only traces of these rivers are their buried beds and the water they left behind, trapped in porous rock like a time capsule. But why does this matter? Because these ancient waterways may have been the highways of early human migration. For decades, scientists assumed our ancestors crossed from Africa into Arabia through narrow coastal routes, clinging to shorelines where fresh water was scarce. Now, evidence suggests another possibility. that the interior of Arabia, far from being a barrier, was a green corridor. Fossilized pollen from grasses and reeds found deep in desert caves confirms that these river valleys were once lush enough to support wildlife and humans. Stone tools scattered along these vanished waterways hint at campsites, places where early travelers paused to drink, hunt, and gather before moving on. The implications are staggering. If Arabia was a network of savannas and wetlands during key periods of prehistory, it could rewrite the story of how humans spread across the globe. Instead of a desperate trek along arid coasts, migration might have been a slower, more deliberate expansion into hospitable landscapes. The Rub al-Khali, now a symbol of emptiness, may have been a bustling hub of life, a place where rivers brought not just water but opportunity. Modern technology is bringing this hidden water back to the surface. In Saudi Arabia and Oman, deep wells tap into these ancient aquifers, drawing up water that fell as rain during the last ice age. While this resource is finite once used, it can't be replaced. It's a lifeline for agriculture in one of the driest regions on Earth. But the real treasure isn't just the water itself, it's the story it tells. Every drop is a clue to a lost world, a reminder that even the harshest deserts were once something else entirely. The Rub al-Khali's secret isn't just buried beneath the sand, it's flowing beneath our feet, whispering of a time when deserts were gardens and emptiness was just an illusion. The Atacama Desert is a place of extremes so dry that some weather stations have never recorded a single drop of rain, where the ground cracks like shattered glass under a relentless sun. Yet every few years something extraordinary happens. A rare downpour awakens the desert, and the barren landscape explodes into color. Fields of purple, yellow, and red flowers burst from the earth, transforming the Atacama into a living tapestry. These superblooms aren't just a fleeting spectacle. They're a glimpse into the desert's hidden past, when this was a land of shrubs, grasses, and even roaming guanacos. How does life survive in a place so inhospitable? The answer lies beneath the surface. While the Atacama's surface appears lifeless for decades at a time, its soil teems with microbial communities so resilient, they've rewritten our understanding of survival. These microorganisms don't just endure the aridity, they thrive in it, lying dormant for years until the slightest hint of moisture triggers them back to life. Some species produce protective biofilms that act like microscopic raincoats, shielding them from the sun's ultraviolet rays. Others have evolved to extract water from the air itself, absorbing trace amounts of humidity through chemical tricks that border on alchemy. What makes these microbes even more remarkable is their resemblance to life that might exist beyond Earth. NASA astrobiologists have dubbed the Atacama a Mars on Earth, a testing ground for theories about how organisms could persist in the red planet's brutal environment. When rovers drill into Martian soil, they're searching for signs of life not unlike the Atacama's hidden microbes. The parallels are uncanny. Both landscapes are bombarded by radiation, starved of liquid water, and yet, in the Atacama's case, secretly alive. The superblooms themselves are another clue to the desert's forgotten vibrancy. The seeds of these flowers, mallow, lilies, and desert pincushions, can lie dormant for decades, waiting for the perfect conditions to germinate. When rain finally comes, often in erratic, El Niño-driven deluges, the plants grow with urgent speed, completing their entire life cycle in weeks before the drought returns. This isn't just survival, it's a masterclass in patience, a reminder that life doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers, biding its time until the moment is right. The Atacama's story isn't just about endurance, it's about transformation. Fossilized rodent burrows and ancient pollen records reveal that this desert was once a mosaic of grasslands and scrub, a habitat that supported foxes, deer, and even early human settlements. Over millennia, shifting ocean currents and rising global temperatures choked off the rains, leaving the land to bake under an unyielding sun. But the desert never fully forgot its greener self. The superblooms are its memory in full bloom, a fleeting resurrection of what once was and what might yet return, if only for a season. For scientists, the Atacama is more than a desert, it's a time machine. By studying how life clings to existence here, they're piecing together the puzzle of how ecosystems adapt or collapse in the face of climate shifts. The same forces that turned the Atacama into a wasteland are now reshaping other parts of the world, from the American Southwest to the Mediterranean. The desert's hidden life offers a warning, but also a strange kind of hope. Even in the harshest conditions, life finds a way, not with brute force, but with ingenuity, resilience, and the quiet certainty that dormancy isn't death. It's just waiting. Antarctica's dry valleys are one of the most alien landscapes on Earth, a place so barren and cold, it's often used to simulate conditions on Mars. But if you could peel back the ice and wind-scoured rock, you'd find a secret buried deep beneath the frozen surface, the remnants of an ancient forest. Not just a few scattered twigs, but towering tree stumps, their bark still etched with the patterns of growth, frozen in time like a snapshot from a world we'd never recognize. These fossilized sentinels, preserved under layers of volcanic ash for 280 million years, tell a story of an Antarctica so lush and green, it would make the Amazon look sparse. The discovery of these forests wasn't just luck, it was a revelation. Paleobotanists working in the transantarctic mountains stumbled upon tree trunks so perfectly fossilized they could count the rings. These weren't the scraggy, stunted plants you might expect near the poles today. These were giants, relatives of modern conifers and ferns, some stretching over 100 feet tall. The ash that buried them did more than just smother. It sealed them in microscopic detail, capturing everything from leaf impressions to the delicate veins of ancient fronds. It's like opening a time capsule from the Permian period, when Earth's continents were still stitched together in the supercontinent Pangaea, and Antarctica sat much farther north, basking in a temperate climate. But how does a rainforest turn into an icebox? The answer lies in the slow, unstoppable dance of plate tectonics. Over millions of years, Antarctica drifted south, carried by the same forces that still shuffle continents today. As it inched toward the pole, its climate grew colder, its winters darker. The forests that once thrived there faced a slow-motion catastrophe, shrinking growing seasons, dwindling sunlight, and eventually freezing temperatures that silenced their growth for good. The ash from volcanic eruptions, which might have seemed like a disaster at the time, became their salvation, encasing them in a protective shell before glaciers could grind them into oblivion. What's truly startling isn't just the transformation of Antarctica, it's the speed at which it happened. Fossilized pollen studies suggest that the shift from rainforest to tundra took less than 1 million years, a heartbeat in geological terms. One layer of sediment shows thriving forests, the next only hardy mosses and lichens clinging to life. It's a stark reminder that ecosystems, no matter how stable they seem, can unravel far quicker than we imagine. These fossil forests aren't just curiosities for scientists, they're a portal to understanding Earth's climate system. By studying how Antarctica's flora responded to gradual cooling, researchers can better predict how modern plants might adapt or fail in the face of today's rapid warming. The parallels are eerie. Just as carbon dioxide levels plummeted in the late Permian, contributing to global cooling, today's soaring CO2 is pushing temperatures in the opposite direction. Antarctica's ancient trees are more than relics. They're a warning written in stone, proof that no continent, no matter how isolated, is immune to the planet's restless change. Yet there's a twist to this story. While most of Antarctica's forests vanished under ice, some of their descendants still survive, not on the frozen continent, but in places like Tasmania and Patagonia. These living fossils, species like the Antarctic beach, are genetic time travelers carrying echoes of a world long gone. They're a reminder that extinction isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just a retreat, a regrouping in more hospitable lands. Antarctica's fossil forests challenge everything we assume about permanence. The coldest, most desolate place on Earth was once a thriving woodland, and the forces that transformed it are still at work today, reshaping our world in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. Libya's Kofra oasis seems like a mirage at first glance, a splash of green in the middle of the Sahara's endless sand. But this isn't just a lucky pocket of water. It's the last surviving remnant of something far grander, a prehistoric mega-lake that once dominated North Africa. Satellite radar images reveal the truth beneath the dunes, the ghostly contours of a body of water so vast it could have swallowed entire countries. At its peak, this ancient lake covered over 42,000 square miles, making it larger than Lake Erie. Its shores weren't just barren edges. They were lifelines for early human communities who fished its waters and hunted along its fertile margins. The Kofra Basin, where the oasis now sits, was the heart of this vanished water world. Today, the oasis's gardens are fed by fossil groundwater, the last drops of a system that thrived when the Sahara was green. But the lake's influence didn't end when it dried up. As the water retreated, the exposed lakebed became a factory of dust-fine, mineral-rich particles that the wind carried across the Atlantic. Scientists tracing this ancient dust trail made a startling discovery. The same sediments that once lined the lake's bottom now form part of the Amazon soil. It's a planetary connection almost too vast to grasp. The Sahara, often seen as a barren void, is secretly one of the Amazon's greatest benefactors, sending nutrients like phosphorus essential for plant growth on a transcontinental journey. This isn't just a curiosity of geology, it's a lesson in how ecosystems communicate across distances we rarely consider. When the Sahara dried, its dust became a lifeline for another rainforest thousands of miles away. The same winds that sculpt dunes in Libya deliver fertilizer to the Amazon, where those minerals replenish soils constantly leached by heavy rains. Without this ancient exchange, the Amazon might look very different, less vibrant, less diverse. But the story doesn't end there. Climate models suggest that as the Sahara cycles between wet and dry phases, the amount of dust it sends skyward changes too. During greener periods, like the African humid period, the dust supply drops. When deserts expand, the wind-borne bounty increases. The Kofra Basin's hidden past forces us to rethink deserts altogether. They're not just barren wastelands, they're active players in Earth's ecological balance. The same processes that turned a lake into dust might one day shift again. Some researchers speculate that if the Sahara were to green once more, whether through natural cycles or human intervention, the Amazon could face a nutrient crisis. It's a reminder that no ecosystem exists in isolation. The fate of a rainforest in South America is tied to the history of a dried-up lake in Africa, bound together by invisible threads of wind and time. The Kofra oasis, with its stubborn patches of green, isn't just a relic. It's a clue to a planetary conversation we're only beginning to decode. Lake Turkana, a shimmering blue jewel in Kenya's arid north, looks like a mirage against the scorched earth. But this isn't just another desert lake. It's the backdrop to one of humanity's greatest origin stories. 2 million years ago, its shores were a paradise teeming with fish, lined with fig trees, and bustling with life. Early humans didn't just survive here, they thrived, leaving behind tools and bones that rewrite our understanding of evolution. The fossils buried in Turkana's sediments aren't just relics, they're pages from a survival manual written by our ancestors, a testament to resilience in the face of a changing world. Walk along the Kofra Ridge today, and the ground beneath your feet tells a story. A stone tool, its edges chipped with deliberate precision, lies beside the fossilized jaw of a crocodile. A few feet away, the skeletal remains of a turtle, its shell cracked open, hints at a meal shared by hominins who once gathered here. These aren't random fragments. They're clues to a time when Turkana was a sprawling oasis, a magnet for life in an otherwise harsh landscape. The lake's ancient shores were a workshop, a butcher's block, and a classroom all in one, where Homo habilis, one of our earliest tool-using relatives, honed the skills that would set humanity on its path. But Turkana's story isn't just about abundance. The same sediments that preserve fossils also record droughts, layers of cracked mud, and salt crusts where the lake shrank to a fraction of its size. These dry spells weren't setbacks, they were catalysts. When water grew scarce, early humans faced a choice: adapt or perish. Some may have followed the retreating shoreline, tracking herds across the savanna. Others likely innovated, crafting sharper tools to extract marrow from bones or digging sticks to unearth tubers when game was scarce. The pressure to survive in this shifting landscape might have even accelerated brain development, pushing our ancestors toward greater problem-solving and social cooperation. The echoes of Turkana's past are eerily relevant today. Just as the lake's fluctuations shaped early humanity, its modern decline, driven by climate change and upstream dams, threatens the livelihoods of 500,000 people who depend on its waters. The parallels are impossible to ignore. 2 million years ago, hominins adapted to Turkana's whims. Now, the lake's modern custodians, the Turkana people, face similar challenges as fishing grounds vanish and pastures wither. But there's a crucial difference. This time, the changes aren't natural. They're driven by human hands, a reminder that the forces shaping our environment today are far more complex than those our ancestors faced. Turkana's greatest lesson isn't just about survival, it's about interconnectedness. The same waters that nurtured early humans also supported ecosystems that stretched from Ethiopia to the Nile. Crocodiles that basked on its shores were part of a food web that included giant hyenas, saber-toothed cats, and elephants. When the lake shrank, it didn't just affect one species, it sent ripples through an entire biome. Today, as Turkana dwindles again, the stakes are just as high. Its fossil record isn't just a window into the past, it's a mirror reflecting our future. The choices we make about water, climate, and conservation will echo far beyond this remote Kenyan basin. Just as they did 2 million years ago, the cradle of humanity still holds us accountable. The Thar Desert stretches across northwest India like a sea of golden sand, its dunes sculpted by relentless winds into waves frozen in time. But beneath this arid expanse lies a secret, the ghostly traces of a river so revered it was worshipped as a goddess. The Saraswati, celebrated in ancient Vedic hymns as a life-giving force, wasn't just myth. Satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar have unveiled its skeleton, a network of buried channels, some wider than the Ganges, weaving through the desert's heart. These aren't mere seasonal streams, but the arteries of a lost river system that once rivaled the Indus in scale and significance. The evidence is etched into the land itself. Along the desert's fringes, villagers still dig wells into what they call the old river's bed, striking water far below the surface, a lingering whisper of the Saraswati's ancient flow. Geologists studying sediment cores have found layers of rounded pebbles and fine silt, textbook signs of a once powerful current. Even more telling are the remnants of freshwater mollusks, their delicate shells preserved in strata that now lie parched under the desert sun. These tiny fossils are silent witnesses to a time when the Thar wasn't a desert at all, but a fertile floodplain nourished by monsoons and snowmelt from the Himalayas. What makes the Saraswati story so compelling isn't just its disappearance, it's the eerie parallel to the decline of the Indus Valley civilization. Around 4,000 years ago, as the river dwindled, the great cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa began to falter. Archaeologists have unearthed wells dug deeper and deeper within these settlements, a desperate response to vanishing water tables. Trade routes that once thrived along the riverbanks grew quiet, and the urban sophistication that defined the region, advanced drainage systems, standardized weights, sprawling granaries fractured under the strain. This wasn't a sudden collapse but a slow unraveling, a cautionary tale of how even the most advanced societies are tethered to the whims of their environment. Yet the Saraswati's legacy isn't just one of loss. Its disappearance reshaped human movement across the subcontinent, driving populations eastward toward the Ganges basin. A cultural memory of the river persisted, woven into Hindu scripture and ritual, its name invoked in prayers long after its waters faded. Today, the Thar's hidden channels offer more than historical intrigue. They're a blueprint for understanding modern water crises. The same geological forces that diverted the Saraswati tectonic shifts altering river courses, changing monsoon patterns mirror challenges faced by today's megacities from Karachi to Chennai. When a civilization's lifeline vanishes, the consequences ripple across centuries. The Saraswati sands hold a warning: water, even when abundant, is never guaranteed. But they also whisper of resilience, of how societies adapt when the rivers they depend on slip beneath the earth. Patagonia's windswept plains, where dust devils spiral across barren horizons, hide a secret beneath their rugged surface. Scattered fragments of petrified wood, their grain still visible after millions of years, tell of a time when this wasn't a desert at all, but a dense forest of towering trees. These fossilized giants, some with trunks wider than cars, are the last witnesses to an ecosystem that vanished in the geological blink of an eye. Walk among them today, and you're standing in what was once a woodland so lush, it would rival the temperate rainforests of modern Chile. The transformation began with fire and ice. Volcanic eruptions, their ash clouds blotting out the sun, triggered a cascade of cooling. As temperatures dropped, the forest's delicate balance unraveled. Trees that once thrived in mild, humid conditions found themselves struggling in shorter growing seasons and fiercer winds. Leaf fossils preserved in layers of sediment show the desperate adaptations. Smaller, thicker leaves evolved to conserve water as the climate grew harsher. But for many species, it wasn't enough. The land dried out, the soils lost their fertility, and one by one the giants fell, their remains buried under layers of volcanic dust and time. This wasn't just a tragedy for the trees. The forest had been home to a cast of creatures straight out of a fantasy novel. Giant sloths, their massive claws adapted for stripping bark, once lumbered through this green world. Fossilized dung preserved in caves reveals their diet: leaves, twigs, even the occasional fruit. But as the trees disappeared, so did their food source. Some sloths evolved to survive on tougher shrubs, their teeth grinding down to nubs from the gritty diet. Others simply vanished, their niches erased by the changing landscape. The same story played out for saber-toothed marsupials and flightless predatory birds, predators that had ruled a woodland kingdom, only to find themselves stranded in a world turning to dust. What's startling isn't just the scale of the change, but the speed. Sediment cores from Patagonian lakes tell the tale. In less than 1,000 years, the forests collapsed. That's faster than the construction of the Great Pyramids, a mere snapshot in Earth's history. And here's the chilling parallel: today's deforestation, driven by chainsaws rather than volcanoes, is happening even faster. The Amazon, Indonesia's rainforests, even the boreal forests of Canada are shrinking at rates that make Patagonia's ancient transformation seem glacial. The lesson written in Patagonia's petrified wood isn't just about the past. It's a blueprint of what happens when tipping points are crossed. Ecosystems don't always fade gently, sometimes they shatter. Yet amid this stark narrative, there's a thread of resilience. The steppes that replaced Patagonia's forests aren't lifeless. Guanacos, the wild cousins of llamas, dart across the plains, their slender legs adapted to the open terrain. Hardy shrubs like caliphate, their yellow flowers defiant against the wind, have roots that dig deep into the volcanic soil. Even the fossilized trees themselves have become part of the new ecosystem, their silica-rich trunks sheltering lichens and insects. The story of Patagonia isn't just one of loss, it's a testament to reinvention, a reminder that life doesn't end when environments change. It evolves, sometimes in ways we can't predict. For scientists, these petrified forests are more than a curiosity. They're a laboratory for understanding modern climate shifts. By studying how species responded to Patagonia's ancient upheaval, which thrived, which adapted, which disappeared, we gain clues about how today's plants and animals might fare in a warming world. The giant sloths are gone, but their legacy lingers in the DNA of their smaller relatives, the tree sloths of Central America, clinging to survival in shrinking rainforests. The past whispers a warning: change is inevitable, but extinction isn't. The difference between the two often comes down to time, space, and the fragile chance to adapt. Patagonia's silent stone forests, standing sentinel in the wind, hold that truth in their fossilized bones. The Simpson Desert's fiery red dunes stretch endlessly under the Australian sun, a landscape so dry it seems impossible anything could survive here. Yet beneath those shifting sands lies a secret layers of ancient mud, cracked and baked by time, holding the unmistakable marks of life. Fossilized crayfish burrows, their delicate spirals preserved like nature's pottery, tell a story of wetlands long vanished. Nearby, the imprints of bird tracks frozen in hardened clay sketch a scene of bustling marshes where water once pooled under wide open skies. This wasn't just a fleeting oasis. It was an ecosystem, alive with the chatter of waterbirds and the rustle of reeds in the wind. For the Aboriginal peoples who have called this land home for tens of thousands of years, these signs aren't surprises, they're memories. Oral histories passed down through generations speak of a time when the desert was threaded with waterways, where ancestors fished and gathered along lush banks. One story from the Arid people describes a great serpent carving channels through the land, its body shaping the rivers that later disappeared. These narratives aren't just myths, they're meticulous records, encoded in songlines and ceremony, matching the very wetlands scientists are now uncovering. When researchers first studied the crayfish burrows, it was Aboriginal elders who pointed them to other sites, places where their ancestors had camped near waterholes now buried under dunes. What makes these collaborations so powerful is how they bridge two ways of knowing. Science brings sediment cores and satellite imagery, revealing the physical traces of lost water. Indigenous knowledge adds context, not just where the wetlands were, but how they behaved, how people interacted with them, even how they smelled after rain. Together, they paint a picture far richer than either could alone. Take the fossilized tracks near Kati Tanda Lake Eyre. While geologists identified them as evidence of shorebirds, local Arabana elders recognized specific species from their shape, birds still important in their culture today. It's a reminder that the desert's past isn't locked away in labs. It lives in the stories of the people who never left it. the implications stretch beyond history. As climate change tightens its grip on Australia's arid heart, understanding how these wetlands vanished and how quickly could offer clues to managing water in an uncertain future. The crayfish burrows, for instance, aren't just relics, they're ecological time capsules. By analyzing the sediment layers around them, scientists have pieced together a timeline of droughts and deluges, cycles that may repeat as global temperatures rise. Meanwhile, Aboriginal fire management practices honed over millennia in these fragile ecosystems are being revived to protect what moisture remains. The Simpson's hidden wetlands are more than a curiosity. They're a blueprint written in mud and memory for resilience in the face of change. Yet perhaps the most haunting lesson lies in the desert silence. Those bird tracks so vivid in the rock belong to species long gone from this parched land. The crayfish, their burrows now bone dry, once thrived in waters that vanished not over centuries but decades. The speed of this transformation echoes today as rivers shrink and aquifers drop across the world's drylands. The Simpsons' whispers from the past urge us to listen closely, not just to the science or the stories, but to what they say together. Because the desert hasn't forgotten its greener self, and if we pay attention, it might just teach us how to survive the next great drying. Iran's Lut Desert is a place where the very air seems to vibrate with heat, a landscape so scorching that satellite measurements have recorded ground temperatures hot enough to melt lead. Yet beneath this inferno lies a paradox, the ghostly fingerprints of a time when water, not fire, ruled this land. High above the dunes, radar images peel back the layers of sand, revealing the scars of ancient riverbeds that once twisted through the valley like veins. These weren't trickles but life-giving channels that fed Neolithic farms, their irrigation networks so advanced they rivaled those of Mesopotamia. The evidence of this lost world isn't just buried, it's etched into the land itself. Near the desert's edge, the crumbling walls of abandoned villages stand as silent witnesses to a greener past. Archaeologists brushing away the dust have uncovered grinding stones still stained with wheat residue and clay tablets marked with crop tallies. These weren't temporary camps, they were thriving communities built by people who knew the rivers as intimately as their own breath. How does a place go from fertile farmland to the hottest spot on Earth? The answer lies in a cascade of consequences, a domino effect that transformed the Lut into a furnace. It started with something as simple as a tree. As early farmers cleared land for crops, they unknowingly snipped a thread in the desert's delicate balance. Fewer plants meant less shade, and without roots to anchor it, the topsoil blew away. The exposed earth, now darker and drier, absorbed more sunlight, heating the air above it. This warmth evaporated what little moisture remained, creating a feedback loop. Less water led to fewer plants, which led to even less water. Over centuries, the cycle accelerated, the land growing hotter and more barren with each generation. The rivers that once sustained life shrank to dusty grooves, their waters retreating underground or vanishing into the thirsty sky. Today, the Lut's extremes are almost beyond comprehension. In summer, the ground burns at 177 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cook an egg on the rocks. The air itself feels like a furnace blast, so dry it wicks moisture from your skin in minutes. Yet even here, life clings on. Hardy desert lizards dart between shadows, their scales reflecting the sun like mirrors. Beetles, their legs elongated to keep their bodies above the scorching sand, march in zigzag patterns to avoid overheating. These survivors are proof that the Lut's transformation wasn't total, just ruthless in its selectivity. What makes the Lut so valuable to scientists isn't just its heat, but its story. This desert is a living laboratory, showing how small human actions can tip an environment into chaos. The same processes that baked the lut are at work today in places like the Amazon and the Sahel, where deforestation and overgrazing are stripping away nature's defenses. But the lut offers more than just warnings. In its extremes, researchers are finding clues to how life might adapt to a hotter world. The microbes that thrive in its salt crusts, for example, produce proteins that stabilize cells under stress, a discovery that could revolutionize everything from crop science to medicine. The Lut's dunes whisper a double-edged truth. Environments can change faster than we expect, but life's resilience runs deeper than we know. Those Neolithic farmers couldn't have imagined the legacy of their fields. Now, the question is what legacy we'll leave in the deserts we're creating today. Arizona's Petrified Forest National Park is a landscape that defies logic, a desert strewn with the shattered remains of trees that glitter like gemstones under the sun. These aren't ordinary logs, they're time capsules transformed over 200 million years ago from living wood into solid stone. Each one tells a story of catastrophe and preservation, a moment frozen in Earth's history when this arid expanse was a lush, steaming floodplain, dense with towering conifers and echoed with the calls of some of the planet's earliest dinosaurs. The process that created these natural masterpieces is as fascinating as the fossils themselves. Picture a towering tree, perhaps a distant relative of today's araucarias, standing tall in a humid jungle. Then, disaster strikes. A volcanic eruption blankets the landscape in thick ash, toppling the forest and burying it under layers of sediment. But this wasn't the end. Groundwater, rich in silica from the volcanic debris, seeped into the buried logs. Slowly, molecule by molecule, the organic material of the wood dissolved away, replaced by quartz and other minerals. The result, perfect stone replicas, preserving every detail down to the growth rings and bark texture, as if the trees were frozen mid-sneeze by some ancient spell. What makes these petrified giants even more extraordinary are their colors. Unlike typical fossils, which tend to be muted browns or grays, these logs shimmer with vibrant hues, deep reds from iron oxide, brilliant yellows from sulfur, and blues and purples from trace minerals like manganese. It's as if nature decided to paint its own museum, turning each log into a psychedelic sculpture. But these colors aren't just for show. They're clues revealing the chemical soup that once surrounded these trees and the conditions that preserved them with such startling fidelity. And then there's the cast of characters that shared this lost world. Fossilized footprints, pressed into the same mudstone layers that entombed the trees, tell us this was no quiet jungle. Here, early dinosaurs like the sleek, predatory Coelophysis darted between the trunks, while hulking, armor-plated reptiles called etosaurs lumbered through the undergrowth. Even the insects left their mark. Fossilized burrows and leaf-munching trails hint at a buzzing, crawling ecosystem that thrived long before flowers or birds existed. It's a snapshot of life at a pivotal moment when reptiles were still experimenting with the forms that would one day rule the planet. The petrified forest isn't just a graveyard, it's a puzzle. The sheer density of fallen logs suggests something violent, perhaps a flood, or a series of volcanic eruptions that flattened entire stands of trees at once. Some trunks lie in chaotic heaps, their branches snapped like twigs, while others are aligned as if carried by ancient currents. Scientists studying these patterns can reconstruct the forces at work, piecing together whether this was a single catastrophic event or a slow accumulation of disasters over centuries. Either way, the forest's fate was sealed under layers of mud and ash, waiting for erosion to expose its secrets millions of years later. But here's the twist: this wasn't just some random patch of wilderness. The petrified logs are remnants of a much larger ecosystem that once stretched across much of what's now the American Southwest. Similar fossils have been found as far away as New Mexico and Utah, suggesting this tropical paradise covered an area larger than modern-day Texas. Over time, as continents shifted and climates changed, this verdant world was swallowed by deserts, its memory preserved only in stone. Today, the park's badlands, a maze of striped cliffs and crumbling hills, guard these fossils like a dragon's hoard. But the real treasure isn't just the petrified wood itself. It's what these stones teach us about resilience and transformation. The same volcanic violence that destroyed this forest also immortalized it, turning tragedy into a time capsule. And in a way, that's the lesson written in these rainbow-colored logs. Even in destruction, there's preservation. Even in endings, there are new beginnings. The trees may be gone, but their stories aren't just surviving, they're shining. The desert winds are more than just invisible currents, they're master sculptors, tirelessly reshaping the landscape grain by grain. In China's Taklamakan Desert, known as the Sea of Death, these relentless breezes perform an astonishing magic trick. One season, they bury entire Silk Road caravans under mountains of sand. The next, they reveal perfectly preserved mummies, their felt clothing and elaborate braids untouched by time. These weren't just any travelers. The Churchian man, a 3,000-year-old corpse with reddish-brown hair and European features, tells a story of ancient migrations that defies our assumptions about early human movement. His discovery, along with bundles of Bronze-Age textiles and wooden carts, came courtesy of the desert's restless winds, which had guarded these secrets for millennia before suddenly unveiling them like a magician's grand finale. This endless dance of concealment and revelation isn't unique to the Taklamakan. Across the Sahara, entire Roman outposts vanish beneath the dunes for centuries, only to re-emerge when the wind decides it's time. In Peru's Nazca Desert, shifting sands periodically expose new sections of those mysterious geoglyphs, the massive drawings etched into the earth adding fresh pieces to an archaeological puzzle we're still deciphering. What makes these processes so remarkable isn't just their power to hide and reveal, but their precision. Wind doesn't erode indiscriminately. It follows patterns, scouring softer sediments while leaving more resistant layers intact. This selective erosion acts like nature's own restoration team, carefully cleaning artifacts without human intervention. A wooden Buddha statue buried in Mongolia's Gobi Desert emerged with its lacquer still gleaming after 700 years, protected by the very sands that concealed it. Yet the wind's influence stretches far beyond archaeology. Those same grains of sand lifted from the Sahara don't just fall back to Earth nearby, they embark on transcontinental journeys. Satellite imagery tracks massive dust plumes as they cross the Atlantic, traveling over 5,000 miles to deposit mineral riches in unlikely places. When Saharan dust rains down on the Amazon, it brings with it phosphorus, a nutrient critical for plant growth that the rainforest's heavy rains constantly leach from the soil. Scientists estimate that 22,000 tons of phosphorus make this journey annually, essentially serving as the Amazon's fertilizer delivery service. This invisible connection means the world's largest desert is secretly nourishing the world's largest rainforest, a relationship we'd never suspect without modern technology to trace the wind's footsteps. The speed at which dunes migrate reveals another layer of the desert's dynamism. In Namibia's Skeleton Coast, star-shaped dunes march westward at about 50 feet per year, swallowing everything in their path. Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia's empty quarter, crescent-shaped Barchan dunes can move 10 times faster, their steep slip faces collapsing and reforming like slow-motion waves. These wandering hills aren't just geological curiosities, they're timekeepers. By measuring dune movements with GPS, researchers can calculate how long ago an artifact was buried or predict when a modern road might disappear under the sand. The ancient city of Ubar, mentioned in Quranic texts as the Atlantis of the Sands, was rediscovered in Oman after satellites detected camel tracks converging on a spot where radar revealed walls buried under shifting dunes. Perhaps most surprisingly, these processes aren't just about destruction. Wind builds as much as it erodes. In Chile's Atacama desert, gypsum crystals grow into towering blades up to 5 feet tall, shaped by persistent winds that deposit mineral layers molecule by molecule. In Tunisia, wind-sorted pebble fields called desert pavements form natural mosaics, their surfaces so tightly packed they resemble man-made cobblestones. Even the iconic saguaro cacti of the American Southwest owe their distinctive shapes to wind patterns, growing arms primarily on their eastern sides where prevailing winds deposit moisture-laden air. The desert isn't being unmade by the wind, it's being remade constantly in an endless cycle of renewal. What emerges from all this motion is a profound truth. Deserts are not static backdrops to human history, but active participants in it. The same winds that erased ancient trade routes also preserved their treasures until we were ready to find them. The dunes that swallowed cities also protected them from looters and the elements. Even the dust that seems like a nuisance carries life-giving minerals across oceans. To understand deserts, we must abandon the idea of them as timeless wastelands and see them for what they truly are: vast, breathing entities, always shifting, always remembering, always whispering their stories to those who know how to listen. The next time you feel a desert breeze, consider what it might be carrying: not just sand, but secrets. Beneath the sun-scorched surface of the world's most hostile deserts, life isn't just surviving, it's thriving in ways that defy imagination. Take Chile's Atacama, where rainfall is so rare, some weather stations have never recorded a single drop. Yet even here, in what scientists once considered a sterile wasteland, bacteria flourish inside rocks, turning the very stones into miniature ecosystems. These aren't your average microbes. They're extremophiles, organisms so resilient they've rewritten the rulebook on where life can exist. Hidden in pores and cracks, they've mastered the art of living on almost nothing, extracting water molecules directly from the air itself. The secret to their survival lies in adaptation pushed to the extreme. Some species produce gel-like substances that trap minuscule amounts of nighttime humidity, creating their own microscopic oases. Others enter suspended animation for decades, reviving instantly when moisture briefly returns. In Argentina's Puno de Atacama, researchers discovered bacteria living inside salt crystals, their cells preserved in a state akin to suspended animation until rare rainfall wakes them. These organisms don't just endure harsh conditions, they've turned adversity into an art form, evolving biochemical tricks that border on science fiction. One species, Crucoccytiopsis, can repair its DNA after years of desiccation, a skill that's attracted NASA attention for its implications in long-duration space travel. What makes these discoveries revolutionary isn't just their strangeness, it's what they reveal about life's tenacity. For decades, scientists assumed the Atacama's hyper-arid core was lifeless. Then, in 2018, a team drilling beneath the surface hit a layer of wet clay teeming with microbial activity. This underground refuge, shielded from the killing UV radiation above, suggests deserts might harbor vast, hidden biospheres we've only begun to map. Similar communities have since been found in Namibia's Namib Desert, where bacteria survive on fog moisture, and in Antarctica's dry valleys, where microbes persist in permafrost. Together, they paint a picture of deserts not as dead zones, but as landscapes pulsing with cryptic life, operating on scales and timelines we're only starting to comprehend. The implications stretch far beyond Earth. Mars, with its ancient river valleys and present-day dryness, mirrors many of the Atacama's extremes. If microbes can thrive inside Atacaman rocks, could Martian life have retreated into similar refuges? The European Space Agency has been testing instruments in Chile's desert, training them to detect the subtle chemical fingerprints of hidden biology. Already, these tools have identified microbial hotspots by detecting minute traces of gases like methane, the same method used by the Curiosity rover on Mars. Every new extremophile discovered in Earth's deserts expands the possible blueprints for extraterrestrial life, suggesting that even seemingly barren worlds might harbor organisms in their cracks and shadows. Yet the most urgent lesson these microbes offer is for our own planet. As climate change accelerates aridification, turning once fertile regions into dust bowls, understanding how life persists in extreme dryness becomes critical. Some researchers are studying desert bacteria to engineer drought-resistant crops, borrowing their tricks for conserving water. Others explore how microbial crusts in places like the Mojave Desert stabilize soils, potentially offering tools to combat desertification. These tiny survivors are more than scientific curiosities. They're living libraries of survival strategies, honed over millions of years in Earth's harshest classrooms. The next time you see a desert, remember, what looks lifeless is often anything but. Beneath your feet could be networks of microorganisms, quietly rewriting our understanding of resilience. They remind us that life doesn't always announce itself with grandeur. Sometimes it whispers, hidden in stones, waiting for the right moment to speak. Desert caves might seem like silent, empty chambers, but step inside, and you're walking into one of nature's most meticulous record keepers. Take Nevada's Lehman Caves, where the cool, dry air acts as a natural preservative, slowing decay to a near standstill. Here, layers of ancient pollen, accumulated over tens of thousands of years, lie undisturbed like pages in a climate diary. Each grain tells a story: shifts in vegetation, fluctuations in rainfall, even the arrival of new species. But pollen isn't the only secret these caves hold. Animal bones, some from creatures long extinct, rest in pristine condition, their surfaces untouched by the weathering that ravages fossils exposed to the elements. These aren't just random remnants, they're pieces of a puzzle, showing how ecosystems transformed as glaciers retreated and deserts expanded. One of the most extraordinary time capsules isn't found in the caves themselves, but just outside Pakrat Middens. These peculiar nests, built by rodents and cemented with their own urine, are like ecological snapshots frozen in amber. Pakrats, creatures of habit, gather plants, seeds, and even insects from their immediate surroundings, then seal them into their dens with a sticky, resin-like mixture. Over centuries, this goo hardens into a durable crust, protecting its contents from rot and predators. Crack open a midden, and you might find twigs from juniper trees that haven't grown in the area for 15,000 years, or fragments of sagebrush from a time when the desert was cooler and wetter. These tiny archives reveal not just what grew here, but when and why it disappeared. The real magic lies in how these records align with broader climate patterns. By comparing Pakrat Middens from different elevations, scientists have mapped the upward retreat of plant species as temperatures rose after the last ice age. For instance, middens in lower elevations showed juniper and pinyon pine dominating during cooler periods, only to be replaced by creosote bush and cactus as the climate warmed and dried. Higher up the slopes, the same plants appear in younger middens, tracing their slow migration to escape the heat. It's a botanical exodus, written in urine and twigs, showing how entire ecosystems marched uphill to survive. But caves and middens don't just document the past, they hint at the future. Layers of pollen in Lehman caves reveal periods of abrupt change, when vegetation shifted dramatically in just a few centuries. Similar rapid transformations are happening today as droughts intensify and heatwaves scorch landscapes. The difference, this time, the driving force isn't natural cycles, but human activity. Desert caves remind us that environments have always changed, but the speed and scale of current shifts are unprecedented. They're a warning etched in stone and resin. What took nature millennia to accomplish, we're triggering in decades. Yet there's hope in these underground archives too. By understanding how plants and animals adapted to past upheavals, we might uncover strategies for resilience. Some species in the middens, like the hardy creosote bush, weathered countless climate swings by evolving drought-resistant leaves and deep roots. Others, like the Joshua tree, survived by shifting their range. These ancient survivors offer clues for restoring damaged ecosystems or even engineering crops to withstand drier conditions. The cave's quiet halls and the packrat's sticky vaults aren't just museums of loss, they're libraries of survival, waiting for us to read their lessons. What's astonishing is how much we've learned from such humble sources. A rodent's nest, a grain of pollen, a bone tucked in a crevice, these fragments weave together into an epic of environmental change. They prove that deserts aren't static wastelands, but dynamic landscapes with memories. And as we face a warming world, these subterranean time capsules challenge us to listen closely. The past they preserve isn't just history, it's a roadmap written in the only language that lasts, the slow, patient record of the Earth itself. Beneath Australia's sun-baked outback lies a hidden ocean, not of water but of time itself. The Great Artesian Basin, a sprawling labyrinth of porous rock, holds water that last saw daylight 2 million years ago, when mammoths still roamed Eurasia and early humans were just beginning to craft stone tools. This isn't just an aquifer, it's a geological time capsule, its layers recording climate shifts like rings in a tree. For the Aboriginal peoples, particularly the Wankangaroo and Yalayandi nations, these waters were more than survival, they were sacred. Natural springs, where the basin's pressure forced water to the surface, became hubs of life and culture. These weren't just watering holes, they were meeting places, trade routes, and spiritual sites, etched into songlines that crisscross the desert. The fossils found near these ancient springs tell a parallel story. Bones of Diprotodon's rhinoceros-sized marsupials and giant kangaroos litter the basin's discharge zones, their remains preserved in mud that once bubbled with artesian flow. These creatures didn't die of thirst, they thrived here, drawn to oases that vanished as the climate dried. Their fossils, often found clustered in layers of silt and clay, are tragic bookmarks in a story of ecological collapse. Yet even as these giants disappeared, the basin endured, its waters slowly recharging over millennia, unseen and untouched. Modern Australia's relationship with this resource couldn't be more different. Boreholes drilled in the late 1800s unleashed what seemed like an infinite supply, transforming arid lands into grazing country. But here's the catch, the basin isn't a bathtub refilling overnight. It's a slow-moving system where water seeps through sandstone at a pace of mere meters per year. For every liter pumped out, it takes centuries to replace. Today, over 4,000 bores tap the basin, many leaking or uncapped, wasting enough water daily to fill Sydney Harbour every few years. The pressure in some zones has dropped so drastically that natural springs, the same ones that sustained indigenous cultures for 50,000 years, have dried up entirely. The parallels to vanished desert water systems are eerie. Just as Libya's Kofra oasis dwindled when ancient rivers shifted, or the Saraswati's disappearance reshaped the Indus Valley, the Great Artesian Basin's decline follows a familiar pattern: discovery, exploitation, and depletion. But there's a crucial difference this time. We're armed with knowledge. Satellite gravity measurements now track underground water reserves with precision, revealing alarming drops in storage. Rehabilitation projects led by indigenous rangers and scientists are plugging leaking bores and reviving traditional spring management practices. What makes the basin's story so urgent isn't just its ecological role, but its cultural memory. Those ancient springs weren't merely sources of water, they were libraries of survival, holding knowledge of how to thrive in a land of extremes. As the basin's waters retreat, so too does the wisdom tied to them. Yet in the cracks between crisis and action, there's hope. The same technology that mapped the basin's decline could guide its recovery, and the same indigenous knowledge that sustained life here for millennia might yet chart a path forward. The Great Artesian Basin isn't just a resource, it's a lesson, written in water and time, about what happens when we take the Earth's gifts for granted. And unlike the fossils it cradles, this story doesn't have to end in extinction. The shifting sands of deserts have long been painted as nature's doing inevitable cycles of Earth's climate. But peel back the layers and you'll find human hands pressing hard on the scales. Take the American Dust Bowl of the 1930s, where the Great Plains didn't just dry up, they were stripped bare by a perfect storm of plowing and drought. Farmers, lured by promises of fertile soil, tore up the native grasses that had held the earth in place for millennia. When the rains failed, as they inevitably do, the land had no defense. Winds lifted the topsoil in towering black blizzards, carrying away an estimated 850 million tons of dirt in just 1 year. This wasn't just bad luck, it was a warning etched in dust. Half a world away, the Sahel region of Africa tells a similar story. Here, overgrazing and the clearing of trees for firewood slowly unraveled the delicate balance between grassland and desert. By the 1970s, droughts that might have been survivable became catastrophic. Without roots to anchor the soil, the wind whisked it away, leaving behind cracked earth and starving communities. Satellite images from the time show the Sahara's edge creeping southward, swallowing villages and livelihoods, yet nestled within this tragedy are pockets of hope. In Niger, farmers began regenerating native trees by protecting saplings instead of clearing them. Over 2 decades, millions of acres of degraded land sprang back to life, proving that even human-caused desertification isn't always a one-way ticket. The common thread in these stories isn't just destruction, it's short-sightedness. Ancient irrigation systems, like those of the Mesopotamians, collapsed when salt from poorly drained fields poisoned the soil. Today, in places like Central Asia's Aral Sea Basin, the same mistakes replay with modern technology. Rivers diverted to irrigate cotton fields turned what was once the world's 4th largest lake into a toxic dust bowl. The difference now, we have the tools to see these crises coming. Satellite monitoring can track soil moisture and vegetation health in real time, giving farmers a chance to adapt before the damage is irreversible. What makes these lessons urgent isn't just the past, it's the future. Climate change acts like an accelerant, turning what might have been manageable droughts into ecological tipping points. But here's the twist, human actions can also slow the march of deserts. In China's Quebuqi Desert, a combination of straw checkerboards to stabilize sand and drought-resistant shrubs has greened over 2,000 square miles. In Israel, drip irrigation technology turns arid land into productive farms with minimal water waste. These solutions aren't about conquering nature, they're about working with its rhythms, just as indigenous pastoralists have done for centuries by rotating grazing lands to let the grass recover. The irony is that deserts themselves aren't the enemy. They're vital ecosystems, home to species and cultures adapted to their harsh beauty. The danger lies in the speed of change, when fertile land degrades too fast for people or wildlife to adapt. That's why the stories of the Dust Bowl and the Sahel matter today. They're not just cautionary tales, they're roadmaps. Hidden in their failures are the seeds of resilience, proving that even in the face of spreading sands, human ingenuity, when humble and observant, can sometimes rewrite the script. The next chapter of our relationship with deserts won't be about stopping them, but about learning where to draw the line. Ancient desert civilizations didn't just survive harsh environments, they mastered them with water solutions so brilliant, they put modern engineering to shame. Take Persia's Qanats, underground tunnels that turned barren landscapes into fertile oases. These weren't simple ditches, they were gravity-powered marvels, gently sloping from mountain aquifers to arid valleys below. Workers dug vertical shafts every 100 feet to remove debris and maintain airflow, creating a network that delivered cool, clean water without a single pump. The result, cities like Gonabad flourished in Iran's dashed Kavir desert, where temperatures soar past 120 degrees, all thanks to qanats that still function after 3,000 years. Half a world away, the Nabateans carved their own watery miracles into the cliffs of Petra. In a land where rain falls just 4 inches a year, they engineered cisterns and channels so precise they captured every precious drop. Their secret, a mastery of terrain. They funneled flash floods through stone conduits into reservoirs lined with waterproof plaster, storing enough water to support 30,000 people. Even their famous treasury building hid a hydraulic system, with channels diverting rainwater from its facade into hidden underground chambers. This wasn't just survival, it was hydrological alchemy, turning sporadic deluges into a reliable lifeline. What's shocking is how these ancient systems outperform modern infrastructure in sustainability. While today's concrete canals lose up to half their water to evaporation, qanats keep every drop shielded in earth-cooled tunnels. And unlike energy-guzzling desalination plants, they require zero fossil fuels. In Oman, where Fallaj channels, a cousin to qanats, still irrigate date palms, farmers measure water shares using star positions and sundials, a tradition unchanged since the Bronze Age. These methods aren't relics, they're time-tested blueprints for resilience. Now, forward-thinking communities are reviving these technologies to combat modern droughts. In arid Arizona, engineers are adapting qanat principles to recharge depleted aquifers, using permeable basins to guide stormwater underground. In Jordan, researchers study Nabatean cisterns to improve rooftop rainwater harvesting in refugee camps. Even mega-cities like Lima, perched between desert and ocean, are building ancient-inspired fog nets to harvest moisture from coastal mist, just as indigenous cultures did 2,000 years ago. The genius of these systems lies in their humility. They didn't fight nature, they collaborated with it. Qanats work with gravity, Nabatean cisterns dance with rainfall patterns, and fog nets embrace humidity. In an era of climate chaos, that lesson might be their greatest gift. The deserts of the past whisper a radical idea. Sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the newest, but the wisest. Earth's deserts don't just appear overnight, they pulse to the rhythm of celestial clocks we're only beginning to understand. Deep in Antarctic ice cores, trapped air bubbles reveal a startling pattern. Every 100,000 years or so, the planet's arid zones expand and contract like lungs breathing in slow motion. These aren't random fluctuations. They're the work of Milankovitch cycles, subtle changes in Earth's orbit that alter how sunlight kisses our planet's surface. When our orbit stretches slightly elliptical, summers grow cooler in the northern hemisphere, allowing ice sheets to accumulate. This steals moisture from the atmosphere, leaving continents parched. Ocean sediment cores tell the same story, with layers of wind-blown dust increasing during these dry spells, painting a picture of advancing deserts across millennia. The Sahara's transformation from grassland to desert 5,000 years ago wasn't an anomaly, it was part of this grand celestial choreography. But here's where the plot thickens. While these orbital cycles once dictated the tempo of desertification, something unprecedented is happening. Human activity has effectively grabbed the baton from nature, accelerating changes that normally unfold over tens of thousands of years. Satellite data shows the world's dry lands expanding at nearly 30% faster than predicted by natural cycles alone. The fingerprints are everywhere: shrinking aquifers under the Arabian Peninsula, dust storms increasing by 50% in the American Southwest, and even the Atacama, Earth's driest desert, experiencing bizarre microbial die-offs as its hyper-arid core grows even drier. What makes this disruption so dangerous isn't just the speed, it's the unpredictability. Natural Milankovitch cycles operate within known parameters, like a metronome keeping time for Earth's climate system. Our interference has thrown that metronome out the window. Take permafrost in cold deserts like the Gobi. It's thawing decades ahead of schedule, releasing ancient carbon stores while creating bizarre, drunken forests where trees lean haphazardly as the ground beneath them liquefies. Or consider the way industrial aerosols are altering rainfall patterns over the Sahel, inadvertently greening some areas while desiccating others in patterns that defy both historical precedent and climate models. The most sobering realization comes from comparing past and present. During the last interglacial period, 125,000 years ago, when Earth's orbit created warming conditions similar to today, deserts expanded gradually over centuries, giving ecosystems time to adapt. Fossil pollen records show plants migrating poleward at a pace of about 1 kilometer per year. Today, with temperatures rising 10 times faster than during that period, many species simply can't keep up. Joshua trees in the Mojave, for instance, would need to shift their range 2,000 meters uphill to survive projected warming, an impossible feat when their seeds only disperse a few dozen meters per generation. Yet within this crisis lies a fascinating insight. By studying how deserts responded to past orbital shifts, scientists are uncovering surprising resilience strategies. Some drought-tolerant plants like the creosote bush have survived millions of years of climate swings by maintaining genetic memory in their seeds, a built-in diversity that allows certain offspring to thrive no matter how conditions change. Ancient aquifers in places like the Nubian desert contain water deposited during wetter orbital phases, proving that nature banks resources for dry spells. These aren't just curiosities, they're potential lifelines. Researchers are now exploring whether we can harness these natural adaptation strategies, from engineering crops with deeper root systems inspired by desert plants to mimicking nature's water banking in our own conservation efforts. The irony is profound. The same orbital mechanics that helped sculpt our planet's starkest landscapes now serve as both warning and guide. Those rhythmic expansions and contractions of deserts over millennia show Earth's remarkable capacity for balance, a balance we've disrupted but might yet learn to emulate. As ice cores and sediment layers continue to reveal the intricate dance between celestial cycles and earthly deserts, one truth becomes clear: understanding these ancient rhythms isn't just about unraveling the past. It's about surviving the future. The future of Earth's deserts isn't just a story of spreading sands, it's a complex tapestry of competing forces that could reshape continents. On one hand, climate models paint a worrying picture of desert creep, where current drylands expand their borders as rising temperatures evaporate moisture from soils. The Sahel region south of the Sahara could see its growing season shrink by 20% this century, turning marginal farmland into dust. Similar fates await parts of the American Southwest and Central Asia, where groundwater depletion and hotter summers create a perfect storm for aridification. Satellite data already shows vegetation struggling at desert edges worldwide, with once reliable grasses withering under prolonged droughts. Yet counterintuitively, some deserts might actually bloom. Elevated carbon dioxide levels act like plant fertilizer, allowing certain hardy species to grow faster with less water. In the Namib Desert, researchers have documented unexpected bursts of grass growth between dunes during wetter years, a phenomenon dubbed CO2 greening. Even the Sahara could see patches of revival if shifting monsoon patterns bring back seasonal rains to areas like the Sudanian savanna. These aren't uniform transformations, but a patchwork of gains and losses where some species thrive while others perish. Acacia trees might spread where date palms once dominated, creating entirely new ecosystems unlike anything we've seen before. The key to understanding these contradictory futures lies buried in the past. Paleoclimate records from cave formations in Oman reveal that during warmer periods 9,000 years ago, the Arabian Desert experienced both expansion and unexpected oases. Stalagmites that grew during wet phases show chemical signatures matching modern Ethiopian rainfall, proving distant weather systems can abruptly rewrite a desert's rules. Similarly, fossilized pollen from Arizona's Petrified Forest National Park demonstrates how some conifers survived ancient warming by retreating to higher elevations, a strategy impossible for today's urbanized landscapes with fragmented habitats. These ancient climate refuges hold urgent lessons for conservationists trying to protect species with nowhere left to go. Human societies face equally stark adaptations. The ghost cities of the Anasazi in the American Southwest stand as eerie reminders of what happens when water management fails. Their abandoned cliff dwellings, vacated during the medieval warm period, mirror modern dilemmas facing Phoenix and Las Vegas. But there are also success stories. The Nabateans of Petra thrived in arid lands by harvesting every raindrop, while the Pueblo peoples developed drought-resistant corn varieties over generations. The difference this time, scale and speed. Over 2 billion people now live in drylands worldwide, with megacities like Cairo and Karachi dependent on dwindling rivers. Climate migration patterns already emerging in the Sahel and Central America offer glimpses of larger displacements to come. Technology might buy us time, but not without trade-offs. Massive solar farms in deserts could provide clean energy while shading the ground enough to allow some vegetation return, but at the cost of disrupting fragile soil crusts that take centuries to form. Cloud seeding experiments in the UAE have boosted rainfall by up to 35% in targeted areas, yet risk altering rainfall patterns downwind. Even ancient Qanat systems being revived in Iran show promise, but can't compensate for aquifers drained by industrial agriculture. The most effective solutions may come from unexpected partnerships like Australian ranchers collaborating with Aboriginal elders to combine satellite soil monitoring with traditional fire practices that encourage grass regeneration. What emerges from all this isn't a single narrative of doom or salvation, but a mosaic of possible futures. Deserts have always been Earth's laboratories of adaptation, where life gets creative under pressure. The question isn't whether they'll change, they always have, but whether we can change with them. As atmospheric chemist Paul Crutzen once observed, we've entered the Anthropocene, an age where human activity rivals geological forces. The deserts of tomorrow will bear our fingerprints for better or worse. Their shifting sands reflect back our choices, reminding us that even the driest places on Earth are mirrors showing not just what was, but what we're becoming. The ghosts of vanished ecosystems whisper a truth we often forget: deserts aren't static wastelands, but living archives of Earth's restless creativity. Every dune, every cracked playa, every wind-carved canyon holds layers of stories where lakes once shimmered and forests breathed. These landscapes teach us that change isn't the exception, it's the rule. But here's the vital lesson: while nature's shifts unfold over millennia, humanity's footprint accelerates them into decades. The green Sahara didn't vanish overnight, it faded over centuries, giving species time to adapt. Today, our actions compress that timeline, forcing ecosystems to reckon with transformations that once took generations in mere years. Yet within these challenges lies an opportunity. The same ingenuity that allowed the Nabateans to thrive in Petra's cliffs or the ancestral pueblones to cultivate the Sonoran Desert can inspire modern solutions. Solar farms harnessing relentless sunlight, fog nets capturing coastal mist, even the revival of ancient canat systems, all prove that deserts aren't problems to fix, but partners in reinvention. The key is humility. Indigenous cultures from Australia to the Americas understood that survival meant listening to the land's rhythms, not conquering them. Their legacy, etched in petroglyphs and oral histories, reminds us that adaptation isn't about technology alone, it's about wisdom. So what do these lost worlds ask of us? To see deserts not as barren backdrops but as teachers. When we study the fossilized pollen of Libya's vanished lakes or trace the Saraswati River's buried channels, we're handed a survival manual written by time itself. These places show that collapse and rebirth are woven into Earth's DNA, but also that every choice ripples across centuries. The civilizations that endured were those who paid attention, who adapted rather than exploited. Now it's your turn to join this conversation. Which forgotten desert ecosystem sparks your curiosity? Is it the mammoths that once roamed Arizona's petrified forest, or the hippos that wallowed in the Namib's ancient rivers? Drop your thoughts below. We're all detectives piecing together this planetary mystery. And if you're hungry for more hidden histories, hit subscribe. Together, let's keep unearthing the past to navigate an uncertain future, one grain of sand at a time.